But now, back home and to a question. Why are some deaths largely ignored by the media while others get national attention? And what, if anything, can be done? In April this year, 28-year-old Molly Ticehurst was allegedly killed by her ex-partner in the New South Wales town of Forbes. And next day on Breakfast Television, her death was leading the programme.
Let's begin at 6 a.m. with Australia's national shame. It's deepening, with another woman allegedly killed at the hands of a man. Molly Ticehurst, a young New South Wales mum, her body found inside her Forbes home.
And over on 7 Sunrise, they were also branding Molly's death a national shame.
Let's go live to Liam Tapper at Police Headquarters in Sydney. Liam, this has rocked the community of Forbes.
Good morning, Shervo. It certainly has. It's not just the community of Forbes, but the whole country.
Later that day, Nine's A Current Affair gave the story 5.5 minutes and featured a close friend of Molly's who told us how much she would be missed.
It's about Molly, and people need to speak Molly's name. She was one of the most beautiful humans that you'll ever meet.
Molly's death, and those of other women allegedly killed by men this year, sparked days of rallies across Australia, culminating in a march on Canberra and a $925 million pledge by the federal government to help women leave violent partners.
The Prime Minister has declared domestic violence a national crisis. He's now ordered an emergency meeting of National Cabinet to address the sickening rise in domestic murders across the country.
Molly's death also led to a tightening of New South Wales bail laws, showing the power of the media to spark change. And 6 months earlier, the murder of Lily James, killed by a former partner in Sydney, also made waves, with the media staying on the story for months. And 9 60 Minutes marking the anniversary of her death last month by interviewing her grieving parents.
Said it was her, but I had to come home. Tell Peter and Max. I feel so bad.
But not all such tragedies get the attention they deserve, especially if the victim is Indigenous.
A woman has died in an alleged domestic violence incident in the remote community of Lajamanu, south of Darwin. Police were called to a local medical clinic yesterday evening where a large crowd had gathered.
The victim in that ABC News report last month, who was neither named nor pictured, was a 42-year-old Indigenous woman killed by her partner of more than 20 years in a town 870 kilometres south of Darwin. But she was just one of many in the Northern Territory whose deaths have gone under the radar, with Assistant Police Commissioner Travis Worst revealing that the Territory is experiencing a domestic violence crisis.
7 matters being investigated by the Northern Territory Police's domestic homicides since 1 June of this year. The Northern Territory cannot accept 1 death, let alone 7 matters being investigated.
That plea by Travis Worst was reported on Sky and the ABC and others in the media and made the front page of the NT News next day.
7th alleged domestic violence death in 4 months.
We need to do better.
But did it manage to capture the national attention? Short answer, no. The following day, Australia's Domestic, Family and Sexual Violence Commissioner, Michaela Cronin, put out a press release to say she was horrified and we should be outraged. And she later told Media Watch she was shocked at the lack of media interest.
There's been very slim coverage, Paul, very little in my view, nowhere near the reaction we saw earlier in the year when we had a series of homicides that were shocking and distressing, and we were getting lots of media requests and lots of media attention and lots of very heartfelt media attention.
We could find nothing at all about the 7 deaths or the NT Police Commissioner's plea on Today or Sunrise or A Current Affair or on 60 Minutes or Spotlight. There was also nothing on 7 TV News, with Michaela Cronin pointing out,
if we'd seen that number of people lose their lives in any other area of the country, there would have been national outrage.
So, why the lack of media concern? Racism must surely be part of the answer. Some, maybe many, white viewers don't care if Indigenous people are being murdered, or at least that's how it appears to people on the front line.
The women that I speak to who work in those communities, those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations in Indigenous communities in the Northern Territory, are very distressed about what they feel like is being ignored by the rest of the country and the media, and that they don't get attention when their women die.
But there are also some difficulties. For these stories to attract national attention, the media need to be able to humanise the victims with names and photographs and quotes from people who missed them, as they did in the cases of Hannah Maguire, Tatiana Dokotaru and Alice McShearer. Journalists in the NT tell us that Indigenous family members are often reluctant to speak to the media and may not want names and photographs being published for cultural reasons. So, if these deaths are reported at all, it tends to be with file vision, exterior shots of local courthouses, or wide shots of dusty, remote towns. And it is the same online. Out of the 7 domestic violence deaths in the NT since June, we could not find a single one reported with a name or a photograph of the victim. The NT is also huge, and journalists are thin on the ground, so that adds another degree of difficulty. But Michaela Cronin says the media can and should do better.
It is hard to get out to some of those communities. I don't think that's good enough. We know this is an issue. We know that these women are losing their lives at far higher rates than other women in other population groups in the community. This is not new. We can find ways to report respectfully on what is a horrific spate of deaths.
One way is to find friends and family who do want to talk to the media. And it is not impossible, as Nine's Darwin News reporter Hannah Taylor showed with this report in June.
Today sitting empty in Coconut Grove, the site of a tragedy that's left family and friends devastated.
She was a beautiful young woman. She was very friendly, that had lots of friends, and she was very kind. And she's a mother of 3.
Blake Carter among those grieving. The body of his friend, a 36-year-old woman, discovered at the block of flats on Saturday.
A human being you can't replace. Simple as that.
That was a powerful story, which did hear from friends and family and did humanise the victim. But it still failed to make the national media or spark weeks of headlines and rallies around the country. And many other deaths go unmarked. The sad truth is that when a woman is killed by her partner, and it's happening at least once a week, her death has a much better chance of being branded a national disgrace if she is young, good-looking and white. And that in itself is also a national disgrace.
So, Hugh, just for clarity, you're saying Donald Trump will win this?
Look, I'm prepared to say that he's ahead, Larry. I'm prepared to say that Donald Trump is well and truly ahead. He has double the number of Electoral College votes compared to Kamala Harris. So at this very early stage, Trump is ahead.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And it was a comeback for the ages, with Trump's victory locked in almost as soon as the count began. The US-owned Channel 10, so sure of the result, it called it 4 hours before anybody else. Talk about confident. But in the end, they were proved right, as the former president swept through the swing states, painting the map red. And with county after county swinging to Trump, Fox News switched from caution to glee to victory.
That Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Addressing a raucous crowd in Florida, Trump praised his new star, Elon Musk, and promised,
"This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have."
And not surprisingly, the comeback kid who shunned mainstream media during his campaign, focusing instead on rallies and podcasts, was making front pages around the world.
Here's Donnie.
You're rehired.
But not all editors could bring themselves to praise Trump's triumph. The Guardian leading with American dread, while Vanity Fair listed the achievements that helped seal Trump's victory.
34.
Felony counts.
1.
Conviction.
2.
Cases pending.
2.
Impeachment.
6.
Bankruptcies.
4 more years.
A rap sheet American voters shrugged off in what CNN contributor Scott Jennings called the revenge of the working class man, adding that the US media had failed again to understand Trump's broad appeal.
But I think for all of us who cover elections and talk about elections and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
No need for such introspection at Fox News, where they were cock-a-hoop that their man was heading back to the White House.
It's a good day. It's morning in America again. It was beautiful. It was sunny. And I spent a lot of time outdoors.
But not a beautiful day for those who backed the loser.
These men insisted Harris would win. Now they're asking what went wrong.
The list of losers, including the so-called Nostradamus of presidential predictions, 77-year-old history professor Alan Lichtman.
Alan Lichtman. Professor Alan Lichtman, who has correctly predicted
almost every presidential election since 1984.
For months, Lichtman was telling the world's media that Harris was going to win, a prediction that did not rely on complex polling, but on answers to a series of markers, which the New York Times celebrated with this strange 7-minute video.
To make his presidential predictions, Alan's model ignores the polls and the pundits.
It hinges on 13 keys that I developed in 1981.
But, as it turned out, Alan's keys were seriously out of tune, leaving Lichtman and the New York Times striking the wrong chord.
Look, my prediction for this presidential election was wrong. I own up to it.
Also getting it wrong was Rory Stewart, co-host of Britain's The Rest is Politics podcast and a former UK cabinet minister, who told us to ignore the polls because Harris would win by a mile, and on the morning after was fessing up on X.
For the record, I was completely wrong about Kamala Harris. It is heartbreaking that Trump is now the president.
Heartbreaking? Not for the 78 million Americans who voted for him, with the FT's Edward Luce concluding,
a sufficient number of Americans want what Trump is selling: mass deportation of illegal immigrants, an end to globalisation, and a middle finger to the liberal elite's often self-parroting approach to identity, better known as wokeness. All of this outweighed whatever doubts voters had about Trump's character.
Journalist Bob Woodward has written books on 10 US presidents going back to Nixon, including 3 on Trump, of whom he is no fan. And at 81, he's deeply worried about the new president's inability to listen and how he'll use his enormous power.
If he falls to the occasion and does some of the things that he has threatened to do, then we are in for one of the darkest periods of U.S. history and world history.
But Woodward also expressed hope over fear that the 47th president's second spell in the White House could be transformative for America.
He has to know he has an opportunity to rise above himself in so many of his instincts and impulses. And if he does that, he could really do something.
No prizes for guessing which one the world will be voting for. But finally, to our least favourite regulator, radio and TV watch poodle, the ACMA, and to our least favourite radio hosts who need no introduction.
I'm a fuel-guzzling, ex-F-boy sniffing asshole.
Hi, I'm Jackie, and it takes me ages to connect dots.
Kyle and Jackie O are the highest paid hosts on Australian radio by a distance. They're also the highest rating, although not in Melbourne. And far and away the foulest mouthed.
Good morning. You don't have a dick in you now, do you, Annie? What's your biggest number for gangbanging? Like letting all the blokes run a train? Like how many guys have you had to go at once? And are they in every hole, these guys, or is it only one hole?
Media Watch has called them out countless times over the years, and listeners have complained just as often. But despite the ACMA pinging the show 3 times in recent years for breaching decency standards in the radio code, the feeble punishments, if you can call them that, have failed to make a difference. As you might gather from this Kyle and Jackie O segment that we highlighted 3 months ago.
All the girls here, well, not all of them, but a lot of them have recorded themselves urinating.
Yeah.
And the boys will try and figure out whose flaps made that wee.
Last week in Senate estimates, Greens Senator Sarah Hanson-Young was demanding to know why the ACMA hasn't done a better job. And having handed over a sample of Kyle and Jackie O's most recent obscenities to the chair, Nerida O'Loughlin, the senator asked,
I want you to just have a look at this and then tell me whether you think you would be able to read this out to us.
Yes, good question. And the chair's answer? She'd prefer not to read it out, adding,
I only skimmed them, Senator, but I wouldn't think they were appropriate for parliamentary language.
Which, of course, prompted the obvious follow-up.
Do you think they would be appropriate for broadcast radio between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 a.m?
O'Loughlin's answer to that, in similar vein, was that she really couldn't comment because...
We have received 59 complaints about the Kyle and Jackie O show between July and October. As you know, under the co-regulatory framework, complaints need to be dealt with by the broadcaster first and come to us for investigation after that.
And that allowed O'Loughlin to dodge the next question too, after Hanson Young had recapped the pissing competition and concluded...
It's not just vulgar, it's disgusting, it's belittling of women, it's misogynistic, it's racist, it's sexist, it's off. Would you agree?
To which the ACMA chair replied...
Senator, we have a particular role. I'm not here to give opinions on programmings.
So, what is she there to do, apart from flannel? And what is the point of a watchdog with a chair paid more than $500,000 a year if it has no bite? And why hasn't the ACMA started its own investigation into Kyle and Jackie O's latest outrage, which it has the power to do, instead of waiting for KIIS FM to answer those 59 complaints? All good questions, as is this one from Sarah Hanson Young about whether content like the pissing competition breached that decency standard in the radio code, which produced the feeblest answer of all.
I think it would be unreasonable for us to give you an opinion at the table.
Really? I mean, this is pretty blatant stuff.
Well, we've only just been given it, Senator. I think we'd like some time to review it.
Seriously? You mean the boss of the media regulator isn't aware of what Kyle and Jackie O are doing? It really does beggar belief. And that's all from us for tonight. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.